So, as we're reading and learning about the Civil War, as a historian, all of our events kind of get jumbled up together. And especially when you have a core text where the author has not included the events in a chronological order. So, in order for us to really understand that main idea, what we have to do is we need to take a moment and start leaving tracks of our thinking, but we've got to organize our thinking. So, right now, I need for you to grab a piece of paper or a notebook that you're going to use as we are reading our core text. Remember, all of our notes, all of our ideas have to stay on one piece of paper because we want to be able to see how all of the events connect. Okay, as we're reading the core text and learning more about the Civil War. So the question, or the research question that we have as a historian, is what are the most important events in the Civil War? Okay, in the last lesson, we were focusing on geography. Okay, and we learned how geography shaped part of the Civil War. So in the next few lessons, now we're going to be focusing on the events. And so we have to be able to take the time to collect these events and put them in order. So what I want to do is, before we get started in reading, I want us to create our timeline. Before we get started in our reading, I want us to think about, what do we already know? What do I already know about the Civil War and the events that have occurred? So, what we'll do is we're going to be adding some dates, okay? If I don't know the exact date, then I'm just going to write down that date, even if I'm not quite accurate about it, because then as I'm reading, I can go back and fix those dates. So if I have an idea, so for example, right now, I know that when we were reading, the Civil War started, I think, in 1861. The problem is, I'm going to put start. Problem is I don't know when the Civil War started. So I've got 1861, start of Civil War. I don't have the exact day, but you know what? It's cool because as I'm reading, I'm going to be adding on to my timeline. Okay, and if I did make a mistake, all I have to do is cross it out and then make sure that I correct it. Oh my goodness, that shows us that learning occurred. So if you have to cross ideas out as we are researching, you're going to pat yourself on the back and kiss your head and go, oh my goodness, I learned something. So right now, take a moment and write down what you know. Okay, I think slavery, well, first of all, we know that President Lincoln was inaugurated. Remember how we read about that? And I'm thinking that that had something important to do. So I'm going to write November 6th, 1860, and that's the inauguration of President Lincoln. And that was important because he was so against slavery. And so this happened before 1861, so before the Civil War occurred. Also, I've been reading that slavery is a huge topic, okay? So I've got to think about, when did slavery begin in the United States? Oh, that's right. Remember how we talked about and we read where the slaves started and how they were transported, and we had thousands and thousands on the ship and they were at the bottom, and how they died and dangerous it was, and how they were broken apart in the families, that we read in our last lesson, or the first lesson, about the Civil War 101. So when was that? Oh, that's right. Slavery began in August 1619. I don't know the exact date, but you know what? That happened right before President Lincoln was inaugurated or became president. Now, I do know that the Civil War ended around 1865, because we read about that. Is there any other information that you can add to your timeline? So, take a moment and add any more information that you have. And then, as we're reading each section, we're going to stop and we're going to the important events to our timeline. And then we're going to stop and we're going to ask ourselves, how do these events all occur? So right now, we've got slavery and President Lincoln, and we're going to see how do these events occur and how important these events are. So go ahead, get your notes ready, add any more that you need to your timeline, and then let's get started.